Hello everyone, Mikey der Panzernator here, and welcome to the 21st Dev Diary for Hearts of Iron 4 Man the Guns. And this is a Naval Rework number 1, and it covers new mission types and changes to the Naval interface. All art and numbers are not final, blah blah blah. You're welcome, Archangel, who is the author of this Dev Diary. So, pretty much, this Dev Diary showcases changes to the naval system beyond just building or designing new ships, in the words of the dev, the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Game Mode, also known as the Panzernator Memorial Game Mode. And so there's a lot of coder art and everything here, and nothing's strictly finished, even though Dan wants hot pink coder art to go into the final build. So as part of the Naval Rework, they have changed patrol and search and destroy missions. Patrol pretty much still does what it used to do. Search and destroy is gone and is replaced with strike force. They covered it in an earlier Dev Diary, and previously the difference between patrol and search and destroy was how many ships you had at the start of the battle. Quickly going over this screenshot, you see Eric Raider and his several task fleets. I think the first one is set to patrol. The second one is set to strike force, which we will cover later. Of course, the patrol are cruisers and destroyers, and the strike force are some more destroyers and some battleships. And then I think we have some heavy cruisers going to join the Osteflot or whatever. So yeah, the old system is gone, and the primary difference is, of course, patrol sends out ships to, imagine this, patrol, while strike force, what strike force does is it keeps the ships in harbor until a patrol has found an enemy. So, like in the screenshot, if you want your fuel-hungry battleships, which all battleships are fuel-hungry, to just sit in port and not burn fuel all the time, you have your patrols go out, and when your patrols find something, the battleships fire up the engines, burn that fuel, and go sink stuff. So, of course, the main purpose of a patrol order is finding the enemy. So you're going to want these ships to have good surface detection, mainly destroyers and cruisers, and have them equipped with radars and or float planes. So if there's an enemy in a zone that you are patrolling, you will gain spotting on them, which in the words of the Dev Diary is where you transition from there's something out there to it's the Bismarck and the Prinz Eugen. At this point, the HMS Hood sorties to destroy them in an easy and painless victory for the Royal Navy. Oof. Funny one there. So of course spotting is affected by weather, terrain, amounts of ships committed, and all of that sort of thing. So you could time it right, where your big ships might be able to evade the patrols and break out to the Atlantic before the enemy knows they are there. And depending on what engagement level your patrol is set to and the enemy strength, your patrol might just decide to deal with the enemy themselves. So if your patrol group, which let's say the one in the screenshot, 6 light cruisers and 4 destroyers, if they find, 1 destroyer, they might say, okay, we got this team, and go for it. So we see a screenshot with patrol here, and so you see base detection, and then +1, and then task forces, and looks like your decryption versus encryption will also affect this, as well as air superiority and radar coverage. So like this one's in the Baltic, if you build radar stations that cover part of the Baltic, it'll be easier to spot stuff, as well as if you have airplanes in the sky, that would make sense. Like I'm reading a book right now, Pearl Harbor, A Matter of Honor, which is about Pearl Harbor and Admiral Kimmel. And one of the things was he's the admiral who was responsible, or who was there in charge of Pearl Harbor whenever it was attacked. And one of the things is he was asking for more airplanes to be able to do better patrols. So having more airplanes, like off of Hawaii, might help you spot ships approaching Hawaii. That might be able to prevent a sneak attack that cripples your main battle fleet for several months to a year. That sounds like it'd be helpful. But moving on, so So each fleet, as mentioned several times by now, is made up by several task forces, and each task force can have its own missions. Fleets are organized into naval theaters, and you can assign any number of sea zones to a fleet. A task force can only be in one place at a time. So if you want to cover multiple sea zones, you should have at least the same number of task forces as you have zones assigned. But you could have a single strike force could support several task forces, with the risk that they can only support one combat at a time. So if 2 patrols spot something, your strike force can only spot 1. This kind of reminds me of Taffy 3 and the Battle of Leyte Gulf, which my grandfather was involved in. He was on the Enterprise. So the Japanese carriers were spotted. Admiral Halsey and the main battle fleet went north to deal with the carriers. And then the main Japanese battle fleet with the Musashi and a bunch of other big ships ran into a Taffy 3, which is an anti-submarine patrol group with a bunch of destroyers, destroyer escorts. And they somehow fended off the main Japanese battle fleet through courage and almost suicidal attacks. But that's a great episode of Battle 360 or Dogfights. I'm not sure. One of those old History Channel shows had a cool one on it. I highly recommend watching it. But the art, of course, on this theater screen is not final. You can see some new icons, some submarine-looking things, some binoculars, maybe, as the one with 2. You got a little steering wheel, the nautical wheel and all of that. And so every fleet can be led by an admiral, and each admiral can, of course, only command a certain number of task forces. So since each task force only covers a single zone, you'll want to make sure you have different fleets covering different parts of the globe, which is especially the case if you are a raider, because you're going to want to cover as much area as possible to spread out the enemy. And you can see a picture here with it looks like some Germans in the Baltic, and it looks like each admiral is going to be able to command 10 task forces, which I think is going to be plenty. I'm not sure. Has it said anything yet? Not sure if a task force is going to be limited by size. But, of course, very similar to... This looks, the similar interface to the land, your army interface. But you can customize your fleets and task forces with insignias and emblems just like you can with armies. So we're getting that, and looks like a crab. You got a jellyfish, a sailor's hat, a gun, a little buoy, a shark fin, a dolphin, a crab. I already said crab. Like a mortar, a skull and crossbones, a torpedo. I like some of the nautical emblems they're adding. And we can see Andrew Cunningham has much bigger task forces, so the home fleet and the reserve fleet and all that. So the convoy rating mission, moving on. Convoy rating still works much how we're used to, but instead of it being just a weekly ticker, it is changed to a weekly ticker instead of a flat modifier. So if you sink convoys, it'll bit by bit reduce war support for the country that loses those convoys, which we will get more information on this in a future dev diary dedicated to raiding and submarines. I'm looking forward to that. I want submarines to work a little differently, maybe more historically, thinking of things like the USS Indianapolis or the Shinano, or a lot of German submarines sinking a bunch of British ships. Continuing on, convoy escort, that mission. Task forces can be assigned to cover several sea zones and will try and defend any convoy within those sea zones. But if you're too spread out and subs can catch the convoys, then few, if any, escorts will be able to defend it. So this sounds like something where you're going to want to have sufficient crew. We can tell in the screenshot that Home Command can only cover 6 convoys for escorting, and which means their efficiency is lowered. At lower efficiencies, convoy escort fleets will not be able to fully cover for all convoys unless ships will be available at the start of combat if they are spotted. And beyond that, there is a new mission, which I love. I love this one. Let's just, just get to it. Invasion support. So a task force that is set to invasion support will defend transports in the area and remain off the beaches to provide naval gunfire support, which is amazing. It mentions it's ideal for your older battleships that just don't cut it anymore. There are so many examples of this historically. Especially if the American fleets, all of our newer battleships, our South Dakotas, our Iowas, our North Carolinas, those are all in the Pacific fighting the Japanese. All of our older battleships are World War I era ships, the ships after they were refitted after Pearl Harbor, the USS Texas, the USS Arizona, not Arizona, rest in peace, Arizona, the USS Arkansas, another state with an A, USS Wyoming, which is the other, or the Arkansas is a Wyoming class. Anyway, these were used during D-Day. The battleship Texas, which is actually very close to me. I need to go visit it. It's a World War I era dreadnought that's been modified, but it does invasion support. It's slow. It doesn't matter. It has big guns. You park yourself off of Normandy like you see in this screenshot, and you deal with things. Although this appears that the British are invading the French and not necessarily Anglo-American forces liberating. Another thing they're adding is mines and minesweeping. So there will be a mission or a task for your task force, mine warfare, which will be conducted by mine laying and minesweeping missions. Although minesweeping ships, minesweepers, provide passive bonuses to moving through minefields, so including them into other task forces would be a good idea. And then there's also naval exercise, which gives ships experience as well as provides naval experience to design new ships, but you have to burn fuel. So if you're a oil-rich nation like the United States, and you're not, or you can just, do a bunch of fleet exercises, just saying, hey, look at all my battleships, don't mess with me. And then Japan messes with you, and then you go sink them all. And also, this is going to be important early war, pre-war, if you want to get some nice modifications in before the whole shebang starts off. And I keep saying, this is my favorite thing, this is my favorite thing. Other favorite thing other than the invasion support is newly built ships are automatically added to a reserve fleet, which exists on a theater level. So ships in the reserve fleet will reinforce other task forces in the same theater. And so you can set up a task force template so that you set up task force templates and the game will try and create that template from available ships and reserves. Think kind of like the Stellaris Fleet Manager, but a little bit different, it sounds like. So if you have, say, a patrol task force, and you lose a couple of destroyers, it'll pull destroyers of that type if you have them in the reserve fleet and reinforce that task force. I don't think it says it, but I think it'll also try and keep the most modern ships, or you'll be able to set priority. So for example, you will want your strike forces to have your modern battleships, whereas your invasion support, you want to have some, just anything goes. Your older battleships will do just fine. And you can also set task force. So if you don't want to reinforce a unit, you can disable automatic reinforcements. A historical example of this is the Asiatic Fleet. Once Japan declares war, the Asiatic Fleet was stationed at the Philippines, and the Philippines didn't last too long after Japan declared war and, Pearl Harbor and all that. And it took us a few years to get it back. The Philippines, not the fleet. But yeah, if your fleet's stuck on the other side, or like say, oh no, I just hit my microphone, just hit my pop filter. Say you're the British and you've lost the Suez and Gibraltar. You don't want ships trying to reinforce fleet stationed at Malta and all of that. And if you don't want to macromanage your task forces to this degree, which several of you might not want to, I will love doing it, I think. I will enjoy the managing of the naval front. There's an auto balance function which splits your existing task forces into several, trying to maintain a strike force and one or more patrol task forces. So that is all we have for this dev diary. Next week, well, in a few days, because again, I apologize. I might not have even said this at the beginning. This video is late because Thanksgiving break and I was out of town, but I'm back, and guess who's back again? Panzer's back. Let's read a dev diary. I say a lot. I noticed that. Anyways, I also say that too. Bunch of filler words. Next week, the dev diary, or in a few days, the dev diary will cover a different part of the Naval rework. So quickly, rejected titles. It has been 0 days since someone made fun of the HMS Hood. Reserve your fleet today. Strike forces are very useful. Use fuel. Haha. I get it, but I missed that the first time I read it. And USA Naval organized start, now 100% less rage quit. So a lot in this. Some stuff we already knew, but the task forces and the strike force and the different mission types, the mine sweeping. I don't know if I'm going to do mine sweeping missions as much. What I think might be a good idea is just to have minesweepers in every fleet and have dedicated mine laying fleets, perhaps. I'm not entirely sure. That's something I'll have to play around with. But yeah, I like the new emblems. I like the shark fin and everything. And the naval, the invasion support. The invasion support, I'm going to use a bunch of invasion support. And the invasion support paired with the reserve fleet and hopefully being able to prioritize ships should be a grand old time. But anyways, that of course is all the time we have for this dev diary. That's not all the time. That's all we have in this dev diary. It's not a video that's timed. This is something where I just talk, and I've said just about all that needs to be said. So I hope you enjoyed this dev diary overview. If you enjoyed it, there will be another one in a few days as I cover tomorrow's dev diary, or today's, or Wednesday, November 28th, depending on when you're watching this. But if you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel so you can see those other dev diaries and Let's Plays and all that. And also follow me on Twitter and check out my Patreon page. Thank you all so much for watching, and until the next one, this is Mikey Panzernator signing out. See ya, nerds!